Where do you see this going, and what would you tell the public they should be concerned about?
Well, my first reaction was they should be impaneling one of those special grand juries about the Epstein global child sex abuse and trafficking conspiracy, because we certainly need a report about that. And there are lots of people who remain to be prosecuted. Some people think that this is still about the Strait of Hormuz, about the algae farm that has taken hold in the reflecting pool. Others don't know. But now, when a real grand jury meets, it can consider lots of different kinds of cases. It can sit on different cases and then either render an indictment or not. This is supposed to be focused on one issue, on one problem. And then even if there is not sufficient evidence to predicate an actual criminal indictment, a report can be issued. So maybe it's a way to try to placate the president and say, we'll look more deeply into the whole issue of what happened there at the reflecting pool. So I don't know. The bottom line is they haven't said what it's about, and it could be about something completely different.
I want to move a little bit away from the reflecting pool. We may get back to it. I'm not sure what Mr. Chairman's cooking over there.
I get back to it.
But I want to play something that Todd Blanche said today at the DOJ, the now Attorney General of the United States, what he said about this weaponization fund.
I get that this is a super fun story to not let die, but I don't know what else to say except that yes, the president feels very strongly, as do I, that there were people who were victims of a Department of Justice that was absolutely weaponized, and he feels very strongly that he would want to make them whole, as do I, but it will not be through the anti-weaponization fund.
Congressman, that's him saying it won't be through the anti-weaponization fund, but they do want to make these people, these are insurrectionists who, some of them took up arms against the United States government on January 6, 2021. If you guys get the gavels, what is the conversation happening about how to try and, one, make sure we understand as the American people where our money is going when it comes to these folks, how they're doling it out? Because I imagine they're not going to be very transparent about it.
Well, that's the point, and we're not waiting for us to get the gavels. We have legislation to block not just the anti-weaponization fund but any other fund that they would rename, because that agreement between Trump, the plaintiff, and Trump, the defendant, specifically says that the attorney general can rename the anti-weaponization fund if he wants to. So they could call it the anti-lawfare fund or the president's closest friends and relatives fund or the MAGA foot soldier fund, and then they could start passing the money out. They already started passing the money out from the judgment fund, which is supposed to be there for real verdicts that come out of courtroom trials against the United States. So we've got legislation to say, we don't care what you call it. The president of the United States is not allowed to take the taxpayers' money to give to his political foot soldiers in his private militia or members of his administration. If these people think they have a valid legal claim, do what everybody else in America does, go to court and raise your claim. Weaponization is not a cause of action in America. Lawfare is not a cause of action. Vindictive prosecution, selective prosecution, those kinds of things, which is what this Department of Justice has been doing to everybody from James Comey to Letitia James to Adam Schiff to Jason Crow to Maggie Goodlander. Yeah, those people could actually go to court and have a real cause of action. But when they just throw that word out there, they're trying to set up a completely separate system as a political slush fund for their friends and their associates and their underlings.
So just to revisit Jeanine Pirro for one moment, simply because I must. The reality of it is, Congressman, she got smacked because she did the thing that she had to do because there was no case against Mr. Hearn. And Donald Trump didn't like it because he got embarrassed. So she went, hauled her behind over to the White House, got her little bags of briefcases and boxes to prove what she was trying to say and why she did what she did. And now here we are with a special grand jury for what? Probably to just trash down on Mr. Hearn or maybe somebody else. But that's the voodoo that they're doing. So that's Jeanine. Bully for you, sir, for keep pressure on the process here, and making sure that there are elements and aspects of the rule of law that must be adhered to. And if not by this administration, you're sticking a pin in it so you can come back to it when you get the gavel to remind them of how they were flouting the law and avoiding responsibility. To the third point, I want to remind you and bring for your thoughts the David Ellison matter. You responded to that in a letter today, noting, now that you have vowed to break your long silence to Mr. Ellison, I invite you to a transcribed interview to tell Congress and America your story and answer the committee's questions about your Donald Trump-enabled shopping spree to consolidate news organizations, movie studios, cable channels, and streaming services. Again, bully for the congressman from Maryland. Talk to us about your letter and what you hope Mr. Ellison will come to the table and talk about with the committee.
Well, they're ravaging the antitrust laws of the country. Donald Trump really is trying to engineer a takeover of the major media entities in the country so that the news, the commentary, the opinion, and even the jokes are to his liking. And the Ellisons, at least from the outside, appear to be completely playing along with this and taking advantage of Donald Trump's authoritarian mania for controlling the media. And we know he's watching TV all day. So he actually thinks being president of the United States means that he can redefine what programs are going to be on TV and what people say when we're there. And he's getting away with it because of his utter weaponization of the Federal Communications Commission. So we need to hear from the Ellisons here. The point is that we are organized now, like in trying to block the $1.8 billion slush fund. We have a discharge petition, which every Democratic member of Congress has signed. We're just looking for 6 more Republicans to go forward to sign that. But we're going to have to do the same thing to try to turn things around at the FCC. I mean, they leave us with a very difficult proposition because they've been insisting that the so-called, the executive theory, the unitary executive theory of the presidency means the president can control the FCC, control the FTC, control every federal regulatory agency. Well, the Roberts Court is going along with that, except for the Fed. That's the only part they've sort of quarantined from this theory. What does that mean when Democrats get back into power? Do we play their game and we get rid of all the Republicans on all the federal commissions and agencies? Or do we have to relocate them from the Article 2 branch of government, from the executive branch into the courts, and go from a federal trade commission to a federal trade court? That they're creating a serious constitutional crisis around all of these administrative agencies. And we do have to figure out what to do about it. But meantime, we're doing everything in our power to defend the antitrust laws and to prevent Donald Trump from exercising complete power over the media, whether we're talking about 60 Minutes and CBS or CNN or anybody else.
From antitrust to ugly pools, I guess. You also sent a letter to Doug Burgum, the Interior Secretary, and Jeanine Pirro, U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. I'm going to read a little bit of you to you. The conclusion seems inescapable that at least one, if not both, of Burgum and Pirro have misled the American public about the evidence and used it to corrupt and weaponize our justice system against an innocent 67-year-old American citizen. What tools do you have in your tool belt? What tools do Democrats have right now, and what will you have after January if you take the House to actually help find some justice here for Mr. Hearn?
Well, you know that we use legislation, we use litigation, and we've filed more than a dozen amicus briefs in different cases. We use public education, and we use public mobilization. And we're using all of those, whatever means are available to us, to try to fight back. Now, Davey Hearn happens to be my constituent. He is a beloved teacher of canoeing and kayaking to generations of children and young people in my district. And there's been a lot of public education and demonstration about that, especially from a lot of my friends in Rockville who've gotten organized behind him. But we've got great lawyers who are working with him, and we're going to do everything in power to make sure that he's not set up as the fall guy for Donald Trump's utter rank incompetence in spending $15 million with his Mar-a-Lago pool guy to come and do this shoddy job that turned the reflecting pool into an algae farm. And they want to blame it on Davey, who dipped his hand in the water to try to figure out what was going on there. So we're just going to be defending everybody who's been set up by this administration. That's why solidarity is the watchword until we get the government back in the hands of people who actually believe in the rule of law.